In the first video in the Back to Basics series, I asked you for ideas as far as subjects that you wanted to see covered. One of the suggestions I got was to talk about different train types and what kinds of goods they carry. So we're going to take that on, but with a bit of a twist. We're going to talk about how those train types translate to train symbols. This was something that I wanted to cover, but whenever I tried to write that, it didn't come out long enough to be a standalone video. Anyway, let's dive in. Obviously, railroads carry basically every type of traffic there is. Simplifying it significantly, there are two types of train. A bulk train is one made up of all the same type of car with the same commodity. This could be a grain train, oil train, coal train, whatever. If the cars are all originating and going to the same places, it's usually called a unit train. The contrast to this is the manifest train, which is many different kinds of car in the same consist. Intermodal trains are kind of both, but also kind of neither. We'll get into that in a bit. First up, we have the hopper. These come in many different forms and can carry many different things. There are uncovered hoppers, which are used to carry anything that can be exposed to rain or snow, like coal or rock, and covered hoppers, which usually carry things like grain, sand, or cement. Most hoppers unload from the bottom via chutes, although some uncovered hoppers are designed to tip over to dump out the load. Shorter 42-foot long covered hoppers have two chutes and are usually carrying heavy things like cement or sand. Larger hoppers have three chutes, are 60 to 65 feet long, and carry things like corn, wheat, barley, and some fertilizers. Food-grade covered hoppers are the same size as the large, but will have 3 or 4 double outlet chutes and lined interiors, and will carry, well, food. By far the most common use for uncovered hoppers is to transport coal, but you may also see coke. No, not the drink. They can have flat sides or rounded sides, it just depends on how the railroad ordered them. Similar are gondolas, which typically have lower sides but do not empty from the bottom, and usually carry scrap metal. Boxcars are pretty self-explanatory. They can carry pretty much anything that fits inside them. A variant of the boxcar is the reefer, which is basically the same thing but insulated and with a refrigeration unit on it. Today these usually carry produce, but back in the old days would carry meat fresh from the slaughterhouses, like the Union stockyards in Chicago. Tanks are pretty self-explanatory too. These can carry pretty much anything, although some common things include ethanol and crude oil. There are two basic types of car in use for intermodal trains. Well cars carry containers, either one to a car or double stacked. Flat cars are used for piggyback service, where the whole trailer is put right on the car for transport. Containers commonly come in two sizes. 40-foot containers are usually called international, and 53-foot containers are usually called domestic. Empty well cars are called bare tables. Intermodal containers can carry pretty much anything that can fit inside them, including hazardous materials, and may be refrigerated also. You'll also see tanks designed to go on well cars as well. Finally, for the scope of this video, we have auto racks, which are cars designed to transport vehicles. In the old days, these were typically open to air like the semis you see on the road today, but typically now they're covered and the car's loaded in through the end of the car, which opens. Passenger trains are pretty self-explanatory too. Because of height restrictions in the east, Amtrak uses single-level Amfleet and Viewliner equipment for many eastern trains, while western trains use double-level superliners. Amfleet and Horizon cars are in use on the regional routes, and the new Venture cars are slowly starting to take over this role as well. Amtrak doesn't run any of the Heritage fleet anymore, but on rare occasions you may catch a privately owned rail car on the back of a regular Amtrak train. They often carry fallen flag names and are cool when you can catch them. Now, with that out of the way, what are train symbols and how do they coincide with car types? Well, the short answer is it depends on the railroad. Train symbol is simply an identifier. Think of it as train number on Amtrak, except much weirder and more complicated. Each railroad has its own system for symboling trains. All have one thing in common though. All will end with a 2-digit number indicating the day of the month the train originated. If it left on the 12th day, that number is 12. For BNSF, the train symbol is 7 letters followed by a number. The first letter is the type of service. S, P, Q, and Z are intermodal. M and H are manifests. C is coal loads and E coal empties. G is grain loads and X empties. U is any other unit train. L and R are locals and road switchers. V is vehicles, and T is transfers. The next three letters are a three-letter origin code. The next three letters after that is the three-letter destination code. Finally, the number is an indicator of priority, with 9 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. I've heard that they might have switched this around, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. UP uses a similar but shorter system, this time only 5 letters usually. The first letter is the type, followed by a 2-letter origin code, then a 2-letter destination code. UP sometimes uses prefixes and suffixes, like a 2 in front of the symbol indicates a second section, while a J in the suffix indicates a train operated jointly with another railroad. For example, when CPKC 149 uses trackage rights on UP to leave Bensonville, it is UP symbol MBMCHJ. I, K, and Z are intermodal trains. M is manifest. UP once used Q for higher priority manifest, but I don't think it does anymore. C is coal, G is grain, O is ore, R is rock, UE is unit ethanol, L is local, Y is yard. CN uses an alphanumeric system, 1 letter then 5 numbers. The letter and the first number is the train type. The first 3 numbers together then make up the train ID. The 4th number is the region the train originated in, and the 5th number is the section. Most commonly, you'll hear trains ID'd simply as the letter and the first 3 numbers. Q100s and Z100s are intermodals. E200s are priority manifests, M300s are long-haul manifests, A400s are short-haul manifests. Locals have L500 symbols. Bulk trains have numbers in the 700s with different letters depending on what it's carrying. C is coal, B is potash, S is sand, and U is anything else. Finally, grain trains are G800s. Norfolk Southern uses a weird system that I don't fully understand. If a letter is in front, it's a local with the letter indicating the division. Letters after numbers indicate common destinations or origins. 100s and 300s are manifests, 200s are intermodals. All bulk trains have symbols in the 400s through 600s, with some letters thrown in sometimes. I don't like it. I'm sure it makes sense if you study it, but I don't really have a reason to since there's no NS anywhere near me in the suburbs. CPKC uses a similar numeric system, but thankfully less confusing than NS. Like NS though, if it has a letter in front, it's a local with the letter corresponding to the region. 100s are intermodals, 200s are manifest, 300s are grain, 500s are tank trains, 600s are other kinds of bulk trains, 800s are coal trains. Prior to about a year ago, CP differentiated between priority manifest in the 200s and regional manifests in the 400s, but these have all been consolidated in the Chicago area. 472 became 252, and 473 became 253. Most trains change symbols, actually. The entire Chicago region changed their letter prefix for locals from G to I. Finally, we have CSX. And simply, the letter in front of the symbol indicates the type. B is bulk, C is coal loads, E is coal empties, G is grain, I is intermodal, L is local, M is manifest, Y is local, and then there's 3 numbers. There are others in there too, but those are pretty much the ones you'll see most commonly. For some railroads, finding the symbol is simple, but you will need to have a radio. NS and CSX trains usually call them out at every signal, or I think they do.
Clear 134, 5757.
CP uses symbols fairly regularly along with lead engine number to identify.
Pingree Grove, lined, locked, normal. Pingree Grove, out.
CP 8869, Pingree Grove, line, locked, normal. CP 253, out.
CN dispatchers typically use symbols when calling trains, but otherwise you won't often hear them.
CN 11, Homewood City, M340, CN 2838, over.
UP sometimes uses symbols on the air, but the farther you get from a terminal, the rarer it gets.
Dispatcher 28, over.
LSF 4, dispatcher, over.
BNSF very, very rarely uses symbols on the air, but nicknames are actually fairly common. For example, St. Paul is the ZCHC STP. Gal Brick is the HGAL BRC. You get the idea. Context clues help immensely. Sometimes you can get an idea from looking at the cars on the train too, but that's beyond the scope of this video. And that's really about it. Knowing how to decipher symbols will help you figure out what's going on around you and where trains are coming from and going, and knowing what you're looking at is typically step one in that process. I'll ask this every time I do one of these, but if you have any suggestions for subjects you'd like to see me tackle, then leave a comment. You can follow me on Instagram and read the blog. Links are in the video description. Until next time, I'm Tyler, and thank you for watching the Northeastern Illinois Railfan YouTube channel.